All right, and we're live. So thank you for tuning in today, live from the FOSC, Future Supply Chain Conference here in Atlanta, Georgia, the Georgia Convention Center. And I've got a couple of guys from DB Schenker who used to be at USA Truck. And so I'm going to talk to them today. We're just going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about your experience with, the acquisition and everything moving forward. Talk about everything in general, freight forwarding, domestic trucking, all the things. But first off, Tyler, Ryan, Tyler, let's start with you. Introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah.
And what you do.
15 years with the company. So, we merged in with DB Schenker in September of 22. And so the last year and a half, we've been, integrating into this top 5 freight forwarder globally. It's been a lot of great opportunities for the business and to learn and to, really take on new challenges. So my team is in charge of executing the operations for the freight and the U.S. land brokerage side. So we're legacy brokerage guys, and
right.
Ryan's group is putting the freight on the board, and we're executing it.
Nice.
Yeah, Ryan Bush. I've been with Schenker now for 18 years, and I support account management for the U.S. land team.
Oh, nice. So, you guys were USA Truck before the merger, and Tyler or Ryan, explain how that's gone. Like, what have been some of the expansion efforts? Because it wasn't like you guys are a differentiated piece that DB Schenker was acquiring to make sure that they had a little bit more breadth in their offering, correct?
Right.
And how's that gone? Has that been pretty seamless in your experience?
From an acquisition, from my perspective, it's gone very well.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of integration in the IT side of things, but
right.
from us in operations, it's been pretty smooth, and we keep it going. And we're leveraging opportunities from the Schenker global reach, right, to put the freight on our trucks and keep that internally for
yep.
what the business was
previously
outsourcing.
Yeah, has that really helped? Has it made your day easier?
It's not made it easier for the challenges of different types of freight we've had to learn.
Right.
We're used to hauling, general commodities, your
yep.
paper towels, snacks and beverages, and we've had to learn how to do it all. TSA freight.
Oh yeah.
If you're coming in and out of airports, that's been super challenging, right? It's a lot to learn, and you don't just learn it overnight.
Right.
It's multiple calls and getting the whole team engaged in what needs to go down there and how we secure that capacity.
So, when you're talking about some of these nuances, I think a lot of people out in the world don't understand how complicated it is to get a piece of freight across the globe. And the international freight, like you just mentioned, is very nuanced. It doesn't necessarily just come in these nice little packages sometimes. You've got these containers that are completely crammed in. You have to repackage them sometimes. Have you had any issues that you didn't know existed before that have made that more of a...
I think we thought that domestic freight was hard, and then when you get into the international space, you realize that it's really hard. That makes domestic seem pretty easy in comparison. I think on the first week we learned 73 new acronyms that we didn't know before, so it's definitely been a challenge, but it's been fun. It's opened our eyes up to a whole new world with the freight forwarding space and the international, and working with a lot of our counterparts in the other departments at Schenker.
Right. How has that gone? Has been the discussing between the two departments? Has that been?
Well, I think there was a little bit of apprehension at first, but I think once they realized that we were coming in to truly be a value add, they've really opened up. I think the greatest part about Schenker is the people, and I've really worked with a lot of great people. Right after the acquisition, we got myself and Tyler got involved in some pretty big projects that really had to pull us out of our comfort zone, and we had to reach out to people we'd never met for support, and they really welcomed us with open arms. So that's been I think the best part of the transition is the learning, but also meeting the people and getting to know the people at Schenker. I
mean, because you have an international group that you talk to. There's different cultures. I think that's one of the coolest parts about logistics and transportation is it forces you to interact with people outside of your sphere. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Has that been anything that you found probably more enjoyable.
The 2 a.m.
Yeah.
conference calls with Germany have, and the like the random calls in the middle of the night have been fun. But no, it's been again a great learning experience.
What about so in the context of the bigger market? We've had this. Domestic truckload has been in a very loose, oversupplied environment for a while now. COVID. What has been y'all's experience coming out of the COVID world specifically?
Well, I think the timing of the acquisition was perfect for us.
Yeah.
Schenker acquired USA Truck because they had a significant domestic spend that they were going to outside parties with, and they said, why don't we just buy a trucking company in a brokerage and do it ourselves? So we got really busy after the acquisition, and it's, there's obviously the market's been in a downturn, but we haven't felt it as much because of that.
Yeah, has the international side been still pretty good for y'all, from y'all's experience?
We're still learning a lot of that, and we've got a lot to focus on the domestic side, but it's a lot.
Yeah, has it helped though, kind of offset some of that domestic?
Oh, absolutely.
Softness? Yeah,
for sure. There's we've had a lot of expedited type freight opportunities, so we've become really good at moving team freight across the country. We're doing box trucks, sprinter vans, a lot more open air equipment, stuff we didn't used to do. And I can't speak highly enough about our people and going to just roll up their sleeves and figure it out. It's been really awesome to see what we're capable of when push comes to shove and we got to figure it out.
Yeah, when you're talking about expedited, I actually saw this expedited thing coming last year. I think I was thinking like, man, this is the perfect environment for expedited environment, because as we've come out of this super tight world during COVID, and we were rebounded all the way back into this kind of super loose domestic truckload space. But then inventory levels, which were a big deal last year, they were like Walmart, Samsung, Target, all talked about how they had too much stuff. Well, then they reduced their inventories, and in the process, though, they needed new stuff. So I was thinking, they don't have anywhere to put it, and they're certainly not going to over-order. So once they get the demand orders in, wouldn't they just need to just ship that right away with kind of a soft capacity environment? That seems to make the most sense. Did y'all see a spike?
We definitely didn't see a downturn in expedite needs.
Yeah.
So it's still very much a...
Does my theory make sense? Does it hold water?
It makes sense.
Okay. I didn't know if that would be a thing that we would actually see manifested, because I kind of made the call and I was like, guys, expedited would be a great. I think I even wrote an article about it somewhere in the fourth quarter. I was like, this feels like a great expedited year. Well, maybe not a great in the context of the pandemic, but in the context of the overall market, I would have expected it to be.
I would say we're not seeing that a lot from our general commodities customers, but the reach of Schenker and some of the customers that come along with that, high-profile customers that we probably wouldn't have been able to touch as just USA Truck.
Yeah,
they're expediting freight, and there's very important stuff that we've got out there moving, and we got to keep it secure in this crazy market.
Yeah, I think customers have, while they have an overabundance of inventory, it's not always the right inventory.
Yes, exactly.
And they're really focused right now on making sure they've got the right products in stock, because they don't want to miss a sale. In this economy, you can't afford to miss a sale. So it's really important that freight gets there on time, more so now than it has been, I think, at any point during the COVID.
I love that. I remember Craig and I were talking about that yesterday on State of Freight. It's kind of like, if you miss your demand, if you miss your revenue, the cost of losing that business isn't just that business, it's future business as well. Are your customers kind of communicating that to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything that's changed in your experience from, say, when the early part of the merger to now in the market dynamics that it's kind of stuck out to you? Like, you talked about expedited. Is there anything else that's kind of stuck out to you that's...
Yeah, I mean, customers are definitely demanding a higher level of service than they did during the pandemic, and they need the product on the shelf. So, again, while they've got this overabundance of products, it's not the right product all the time. So having the right inventory is really the most important thing now. So we've definitely seen service level expectations increase, which is fine with us. We we feel like we're some of the best in the industry at hitting those, high 90% on time, and we've seen an uptick in demand because of that.
Okay. Does the do you feel like do you have to do any preparation for your customers? Like, hey, we're going to get it there to you as fast as humanly possible, but we're are there expectations kind of now that we've been in this cycle of extreme looseness? Do you think their expectations are now this is how it's going to be forever?
I think that customers are smart enough to know that things are going to change, right?
Yeah.
It's a cyclical market, and that the dynamics will change. I think they're going to hold out as long as they can and push us to execute better. But at the same time, we need to execute at those levels regardless of the market. That's our strategy, is to be the one you call when you really need something delivered. If you really want the high service, we're not just looking to be the broker that's going to go on a board and bid a load and hope we make $25 on it. That's really not our model. We want to provide a high level of service and then be able to engage with our customers and sell that, and hope they trust us with that.
Are you guys able to leverage your breadth of services in the brokerage environment and the domestic side? Has that helped you really expand?
Yeah, and I think it's the opposite as well. I think our trucks allow us. We really look at ourselves as a capacity provider more so than a truckload truck provider, or just a trucking company, or just a brokerage. And what we've seen is that our customers that are the most successful are the ones that allow us to utilize both services. Sometimes within on the same lanes, it's let us go out. If we've got a truck, we'll put a truck on it. If not, then allow us to leverage. We've got a really robust power-only program, and we've got a really great brokerage team. So just let us figure out how to move the shipment, and as long as we meet the SLAs and we keep the rate the same, most customers are open to that and lean into that with us.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I look at the maritime data quite a bit as kind of a leading indicator for the domestic space. Do you guys do the same thing? Do you get a little bit more forward-looking because of your international side?
I don't think we've leveraged that data yet to really make predictions. We really look at it in on the contract space, really looking at the cycles of the contract. But in the brokerage space, it's really a day-to-day business. You can look at what's going to happen in a month or two, but you've got to execute today.
Right. So when you talk about contract space, kind of expand on that a little bit. We've gotten into this period where I think spot, ad hoc, transactional freight has been a little bit almost mixed together with this contract space. And in my mind, the contract space is this long-term, relationship. We're going to have some consistency. The business is going to be there for at least 12 months. Have you found that there's been any convolution there with your, kind of transactional and contract mix?
Yeah, we think of contract the same way.
Yeah.
We definitely see, customers are going to lean into the spot market right now and try to pull some volume, and that's okay as long as we're transparent about what we're doing. And but we definitely look at contract as a 12-month cycle.
Yeah, I do as well. I didn't know if you guys were experiencing people saying hey, we expect the spot rate for long term, kind of in the same sense that the contract rate is. Have you gotten any of that, or
we do a little bit
of that?
Yeah, I think customers though are willing to pay for service.
Okay.
And you've got to really put your efforts into those customers that are not just wanting to be the absolute cheapest. And not to say that we don't want those customers. We really like to think that there's a room for all customers and all freight within our network. Yeah. But if you want to go and build your brand with certain customers, you've got to lean into the ones that value your service.
For sure. Have you found it to be challenging to kind of expand your customer base during this period of time, or has the merger kind of helped pad that?
The merger's helped with that tremendously, but yeah, it's been a tough market for sure.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to several people, obviously in the last year and a half, that have had the challenges. But the international side seems to have not felt the same level of. I don't know. It's just different. We look at rates coming into the United States on the international side, and we see those rates, obviously getting a little bit of a boost from the conflict and stuff like that. Have y'all felt any of that kind of bleed into the domestic side?
Rate-wise, no.
I mean, in terms of just like people maybe saying, I need to make sure that goods are here faster because of the uncertainty on the maritime side. I guess I should clarify.
No, I think we've seen some data that shows that there's more freight going on the air, going in the air versus going on the ocean, but we really don't have visibility to it until it hits the U.S. for what, you know, that's all managed, you know, with our counterparts over in Europe and in Asia. But we do see that, you know, once it gets here, there's definitely a demand to get it to the end consumer faster because of the delays that we're seeing on the water.
Is there any other sectors that you guys have visibility into that you feel are underserved right now, like that have the potential like to be bigger than they are right now today?
I think there's the automotive is going to be a big piece going forward. I think that's going to be a sector that really grows because I think there was a lot of demand, and then there was when interest rates went up, people quit buying cars, so to speak, and now there's some pent-up demand for automotive, you know, both in the aftermarket with parts because people are keeping their cars a little longer, but also at some point people are going to have to replace their cars, and that's kind of the sentiment we see is that there's going to be definitely a spike in automotive.
Do y'all think the Mexico, the nearshoring, I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of energy going into Mexico right now. Do y'all feel like that's going to be a big component?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's already more demand than capacity in Mexico, and it's only going to get worse for sure.
Do y'all have a solution that you offer down there?
Yeah, so not only do we have a completely different product with Schenker, with a land product in Mexico, we also do a significant amount of cross-border through the legacy USA truck, now DB Schenker land. We've got a terminal in Laredo. We have a air and ocean branch in El Paso, so we're starting to look at that as an alternative to the Laredo crossing. We utilize both our assets and some third-party carriers that come across the border for us. So it's definitely a robust product for us. And you know, we just hired a new terminal manager in Laredo, and really looking to grow that space.
You know, back when I was in LTL, we had a terminal down there, and I remember Laredo being kind of like an afterthought. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, we got to have a presence there, but we didn't really have that much going on at the time. It was more strangely inbound than outbound for us at that point. But how have you seen that area or that border change over the last few years? Has that been as big of a thing as people think it is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's definitely, you know, we talked about it a lot here at the conference that there's manufacturing being pulled from China and you know, some other Asian countries into Laredo. It's going to grow. Yeah. It's going to be a focus, I think, for a lot of carriers that aren't focusing on it now. But we've had a presence there since probably the late 80s, so it's not something that's maybe new to us. Just we're seeing more opportunities from customers.
What about further up the border? I mean, I've talked about Nogales a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be getting near of the attention, and maybe Eagle Pass to an extent. But those don't seem to be getting still that much action.
We've got stuff coming across El Paso,
El Paso.
The other two you mentioned. We're seeing more and more freight through El Paso.
I mean, because there's the roads, obviously, a lot of it flows naturally towards Laredo and some of the eastern side of the country a little bit easier. But why do you think El Paso? Do you think El Paso is a big growth opportunity?
Well, we've got a Schenker branch down there, and they've got their legacy customers, and we're supporting the U.S. domestic when it comes across. And, Still learning a lot of that, but we're trying to put ourselves in a good position to take advantage of the opportunities in Mexico. I mean, it's there and it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I've seen the manufacturing build out down there in pictures. And then there's also a lot of investment going on the western side of the country as well. Do you think that that's going to influence any of the freight flow domestically?
I think that it will, because the freight's going to, you know, like you mentioned, move up the western side of.
Because I know that's a little bit more challenging of an environment to kind of, for transportation and logistics specifically. And of course, as you know, the West Coast ports, Los Angeles, Long Beach, tend to be, I mean, they're the international hubs for freight coming into the United States. But it seems like people have moved away from that a little bit. Have y'all seen any of that manifesting?
Yeah, there was a period of time where a lot of the freight was coming to the ports in Texas, New Orleans, the East Coast ports. I think some of that changed. This year there were some challenges over the last few months, or back 6-8 months ago in the Panama Canal getting freight through. And then again, speed of market's a big thing with interest rates. I think that a lot of customers are they're obviously, they've laid out cash for their goods, and if they can get them into market a few days sooner, they save a lot of money in the interest to the cost of capital. So you're going to see that when the cost of capital is high, consumers are going to want to get their customers are going to want to get their products into stores and get that inventory turned as quick as possible. So you've seen a little bit of a resurgence in the West Coast ports over the last year. I also think that, like you mentioned, there's a lot of goods coming in from Asia into Mexico that are, I think they mentioned, a lot of stuff's getting repackaged in Western Mexico and then so that's where you're seeing those upticks in the El Paso crossings and the Eagle Pass, the things like that.
Right. So the Panama Canal, totally big story over the winter. Has that kind of gone away? Have the rains come back? I haven't heard anything about it in a few months.
Yeah,
it almost feels like a non-story, but that doesn't mean that it's gone away. I didn't know if you guys had any insight.
No, I think on the domestic side we don't follow that close enough.
Yeah.
I don't. Tyler may.
I'm just seeing data that it's coming back, but not until early 2025 are they going to be able to
go to full
crossings as they used to.
Yeah, it's fascinating too because we saw the Savannah area kind of like fall off last year a little bit in relation to where it had been at least, and the geopolitical stuff, obviously over the conflict in the Middle East and the Panama Canal seemed to be the big storylines that were driving that. But I also was like, isn't it just easier to pull it in to the shortest distance and shortest route and just put it on a truck?
Yeah. It's at one point the domestic transportation was so expensive that it was cheaper to keep it on the water. And then, but now in the market we're in, it's definitely more expensive. We talked about here at the conference about the international rates. So if you can get it into the U.S. in the cheapest possible way and then truck it, it's the most makes the most economical sense for the customer.
Do y'all feel like this peak season for maritime and international, and then it kind of domestic follows it later in the year? Do you feel like peak season will have an influence this year? Do you think it's going to be a big deal, especially with all the stuff going on?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
we think that the market's going to be a more normal trend.
It looks to me like we're falling back into a little bit more seasonability, but the demand has been so, I don't know. I don't want to call it erratic because it hasn't been erratic. It's actually been pretty stable. But I guess bigger. And that's more of an economic statement than it is a transportation statement. Bigger than I expected. And thanks to a lot of the inventories, getting reduced and things like that. So I was just curious if you guys had any insight into the fact that, this year's peak season, we had Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year. Doesn't really have an influence on domestic transportation, but it does have an influence on warehousing and logistics because everybody pulls in their freights and stuff like that into these warehouses for future use because they don't get their goods for a minute. In peak season of maritime, and validate me if I'm wrong here, typically we see a bunch of stuff come in July, August, and that transitions almost immediately into domestic trucking. Have y'all seen that happen in recent years? Like the long haul freight kind of starts picking up in September, October.
I think that's traditionally the way it works.
Yeah.
I think the last few years have been very untraditional.
Okay.
And so to say that what we've seen in last year is going to be similar to this year, I think would be a stretch.
Yeah.
I think that I personally think that we're getting into more of a normal cycle. We've the pandemic is now in the rearview mirror, and we'll see.
All right. Well, good deal. So we only have about a minute left. So I want you guys to give me your best plug for the future of what you're excited about moving forward at DB Schenker.
You Want me to go first? Okay. Well, for me, I've been a project owning the development of our mobile app for our independent contractors, part of our independent contractor program, so they can plan their own weeks out. And it's also available to our external carriers, and that's on the Apple and Google Play stores now. And I'm very excited about that. So adding that piece of technology to our brokerage operation and adding more tech to what we do with our humans is exciting for me, and I'm hoping this market gets back to some kind of balance, right?
Yeah, you and a lot of other people.
Yeah, Tyler's really excited about the mobile app. He's put just a significant amount of energy and effort over the last couple years into that, and I think that's what we're the most excited about. We've got really great people. We've got really great teams at Schenker, so just to see how they're going to flourish and thrive when the market starts to come back, and it's really what I'm the most excited about.
All right, mobile app and a market, I don't know, turning, getting better, improvement. Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming out here today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming to the conference, and thank you all for watching.
Yep, thanks.
Have a great rest of the day.